Hi everyone! I know it's been a hot minute, but I was not feeling the vibe of posting on the internet with all of the AI and general state of the world and everything going on, but Sora shut down, and I asked people on Tumblr if they wanted to see this, and they were like, yes, please give us a distraction. So I'm going to provide some distraction today. And I'm going to talk about the Lipstick Lesbians thing and the whole leaked labs thing. So I made a Tumblr post about it, and I'm going to kind of use that as my guideline for talking about this. I'm going to be quoting my own Tumblr post directly, basically, but I'm also going to be providing additional commentary because in that post I did try to be a little more informative than entertaining, and I'm going to try to be a little more entertaining in this one. So, basically, okay, the Lipstick Lesbians. I had to cut that whole chunk out because I got so off topic because immediately I started going off into tangents. But anyways, okay, so the Lipstick Lesbians are a couple. They are a wife duo. Their names are Alexis, she's like in charge of the camera the most, and Christina, she's behind the camera. Their videos are usually formatted like Christina asking a question and Alexis answering it about a specific makeup product or something like that. And the videos are stylized as informative reviews. I say stylized because I don't think that that's accurate. A lot of their reviews are partnership or sponsorships, so less informative from an actual objective standpoint and more informative from a marketing brief standpoint, which is great. We need more of that going on. Not enough advertising happening in the world today. Oh boy. They built their audience up by claiming to have many years of experience in makeup product development and deep insider knowledge of product production. Whenever I look over here, I'm referencing my Tumblr post, which I'm just gonna preface this with they do not actually have product development experience according to their LinkedIn. People checked their LinkedIn with employment history prior to their becoming online influencers, and they actually are in marketing. There was marketing and accounting, and no product development, lab work, or anything like that. And just bear in mind that their only experience working in the beauty industry, according to their LinkedIn, was marketing. Because it's gonna make everything I tell you make so much sense. But people didn't know that. Before this happened, people didn't know that. They claimed that they were product developers, people believed them because they knew the right words to say to make it seem like they had insider knowledge. Sorry, had to cut, used a new setting spray and it's triggering my allergies. Basically, they have had their fair share of kerfuffles, we'll call them, in the past. They do not exactly have a spotless record prior to this leaked lab situation, and I think this is very important context. Every time I look over here, by the way, I am referencing my Tumblr post. So there's a lot of people who have been uncomfortable over the years with the fact that they pretty much exclusively refer to women of color as our melanated queens, which is like a cute thing to say, but not if it's the exclusive only term that you use when referring to people of color. Then it gets weird. Then it gets a little objectifying-ish. So there's a fair amount of people who have had problems with that. And for context, they are both white. They've been caught doing undisclosed ads. I believe I mentioned that. Pretending to do product analysis, and they're basically just like reading the product description card in front of them, because for some reason they do all of their videos, or they used to. When they would come across my feed all the time, I did see a Milk Makeup one where they weren't inside of a Sephora or Ulta or whatever, but for a very long time all of their videos were exclusively like walking into the Sephora. They do not own the product. They take a sample off of the gondola in front of them and then they swatch it and talk about it, which is weird because first impression reviews are not generally incredibly reliable reviews unless it's for something that's like easy to determine on a first impression, like, oh, the lipstick didn't dry out my lips, but even then it's like, oh, 2 hours later it did, but that's not in the first impression. So in my opinion, that's already unreliable. But anyway, people generally trusted them based on their self-proclaimed qualifications, which we already mentioned why those are not actual qualifications, according to their LinkedIn. Maybe there's experience that they didn't put on there for some reason. That's possible. Trust began waning in their fan base with 2 particular instances. The first one being this other brand called Patrick Ta, which is owned by a celebrity makeup artist and is known for rather high prices, released eyeshadow duos, so 2 eyeshadows, in one little container, and they were $42. This was before all of the tariffs and all of that, right? Like, this was a little while ago, before the economy really went, so it was even more egregious and less justifiable. It's still not justifiable right now, but it was even more like, what are you doing? $42 eyeshadow duos? That's crazy. And Patrick Ta, the company, and the individual man tried to justify the price by claiming that the eyeshadows were made of 100% crushed pearls, which, first of all, pearls are not used in making makeup. Generally, what makes eyeshadow sparkly is mica or things like that, like the mica or synthetic alternatives to mica. Not pearls, because that's incredibly expensive. And also, if it's an eyeshadow, it can't be 100% crushed pearl, because it needs to have other ingredients that make it into a little puck and not just a loose powder. So that was all just untrue. And this Patrick Ta situation is a whole other thing. I could make a whole other video on that. That one involved fake crying and... Anyway, Lipstick Lesbians. So all of that happened. People were not happy with the product. People were getting it. They were like, this performs exactly the same as a drugstore alternative that I know about. This is not as special as they claimed it was in the advertising. It's not worth the money. That's what a lot of reviewers were saying. At the same time, people were also discussing how common it was to purchase Patrick Ta products only for them to mold within less than the expiration date stated on the box, or sometimes there were people even receiving their boxes and the eyeshadow was already moldy. It's pretty popular now to not use preservatives in cosmetics, or at least not tried and tested preservatives. And, there are people who have allergies to parabens and stuff. It's fair that they have alternatives on the market, but it's kind of being billed as like, it makes the makeup better, and then the makeup molds really fast. Hi, baby. My cat Coleslaw is on the thing now. So there was a lot of photos and everything of this happening with Patrick Ta products. So in general, that brand getting a bunch of backlash. And the Lipstick Lesbians love to go to bat for a brand that is having a legitimate, really bad problem. And they love to be like, you guys are all just idiots who don't understand the corporation and how beautiful they are. They love to do that. They made a video defending the $42 eyeshadow duos, and I don't know why they didn't cut this out. Like, there's this weird running theme of them being too lazy to cut out stuff in their videos, that or they're rage baiting. They're either rage baiting or they're lazy, and I genuinely can't tell which it is. Oh my god, it fell out. The eyeshadow, they were holding up the duo. I don't own an eyeshadow duo. Let me just see if I have anything I can use to, okay. Imagine that this is smaller and that there's like 2 eyeshadows in it, okay? They held it up like this, and one of the eyeshadows fell out entirely. Just onto the floor. The whole thing. There wasn't even a little bit left in the component. And they left it in the video and tried to say, that's how you can tell how high quality it is. Only the truly highest quality eyeshadows will fall out of their container onto the floor when you pick it up. No. And you know what? Even if that was a marker of quality, which it's not, even if it was, I will buy the cheap stuff instead then. I have 4 cats. I held up 8 fingers. I have 4 cats. I do not want anything that I put on my face touching the ground. Because no matter how much cleaning or anything happens, I have 4 cats. One of them's right there. He's napping. The other one, you saw her. Which, by the way, this rhetoric comes back with this whole leaked labs thing, by the way. Like, this exact same rhetoric of, like, no, it's okay that, like, it falls on the floor and it's a weird putty that doesn't have a sanitary component it fits into. That's fine, because that's exactly what the product they released was. And you know what? This happened recently enough that I bet that they defended the Patrick Ta shadows like that and left that in. Now that I'm thinking about it, I bet that they did that because they knew that their product would have a similar... was similar to what happened there. I'm not saying that that's what's true, but I am saying that if I was a betting person, I would probably bet on it. Okay. It just, oh god, yeah. It's proof of how high quality it is. That's just, Oh, and they love the word innovative, and so they were like, it's just the innovation, that it's an innovative, it's a slurry. It's an innovative slurry, so it fell out, and that's how you know it's high quality. Oh, it makes me so mad. Yeah, obviously people didn't like it. So people were upset that they said that, and were like, this is a pretty sellout thing for you to post. You're not really considering the consumer, which of course they're not considering the consumer because they're in marketing. People in marketing don't consider the consumer experience. They just consider, can we get you to buy the thing in the first place? And I say that because while I've not been to marketing school, I did have a job once where I was asked to do the marketing tasks, and I had a bit of a natural knack for it. And there was some shady things involved in doing that. And all I did was like write a newsletter about like things that we sold that would go out just to people who signed up for the newsletter. But still, I still felt so like, when I was filling the prompts for like, describe this product in this way. And I was like, but it's not this way. Okay, I guess I have to, because it's my job. The second major audience trust damaging situation that happened was basically, okay, if you don't know who Michaela Noguera is, I do not have the time. My phone doesn't have the memory to describe to you the amount of reasons that Michaela Noguera is not a trustworthy person. There are so many scandals associated with her over many years at this point. So I'm just going to tell you about this latest one that, again, the Lipstick Lesbians defended her. And this is important context because it makes it so much less of a surprise that they scammed their own audience. And Leaked Labs is not, I believe, technically considered a scam under the strict definition. Like, legally, I don't think you could get them into court for that. So when I say scam, it's an opinion, and it's a hyperbolic opinion. I'm using hyperbole because of an emotional state, just so we're clear on that. Alleged scam, we'll call it, but I personally believe that it is. The second major audience trust damaging situation is connected to a drama-ridden launch by another TikToker who's her own info dumped entirely. Bare bones thing to know is that her name is Michaela. She started her own brand called POV Beauty. She's pretty well known for her undisclosed ads, straight up lying, and is commonly referred to as a scammer by people outside of her fan base. She owned the makeup, well, it's not a makeup brand, it's a makeup prep brand. She calls it that because she doesn't want to call it skincare because she's sponsored by a lot of skincare brands, in my opinion. That's why she called it that. Because it's just skincare. It's no different from, like, it's not different in that it's so makeup specific. It's pretty much just skincare. Nikki Tutorials launched a similar brand a few years ago called Nimya. Anyway. But they did end up venturing into makeup, and they released tinted, colored versions of a squeeze tube lip balm, and they sold them as a little kit. It came in a box with a lip liner in there as well. The lip kits were advertised by Michaela herself in now deleted videos as being buildable without getting overly thick or sticky. According to the ads she herself posted, you could do a thin layer of the balm for just a tint of color, or you could build it up with many, many layers for bold color without getting those, like, sometimes when you build up a product, like I have this one from Moira Cosmetics. It's basically like a little squeeze tube full of a liquidy balm that's colored, and you squeeze it out like this. And sometimes when you build up products like this, it'll get to a point where, oh man, I wasted that. No, wait, it's sinking back in. It's fine. It'll get to a point where it's too built up, and you'll get these weird, every time you open your mouth, there's like strings, and they look really gross, and they can get in your mouth, and then it tastes bad also. People who wear makeup eat so many lip products over the course of their lifetime. It's just unpleasant when you can see it happening. So she said you could do a thin layer for just a hint of color, or you could build it up really thick so that you get something way more opaque, like what you would get with a, what am I looking at for? Like something you could get from like a lip gloss like this, right? Like you could build it up to be even brighter than that. That's what the owner of the brand herself claimed in the ads for the product. And that it wouldn't get goopy and stringy. They claimed that there would be no patchiness or anything, and a little side note, but she also claimed that the lip liners were really long lasting, and it was impossible to remove them even with a makeup wipe, which, first of all, they didn't end up being long lasting. People could remove them very easily, and they would wear off very easily, but also, why would you want that? I would like to be able to remove my makeup at the end of the day. Maybe there is a demographic for whom they need like their lip liner to last a really, really long time to that degree, but to me, that's a little scary, because I've had lipsticks that don't come off even when I scrub and scrub and scrub with like lip oil and sugar scrubs and things, and I really don't like when that happens, because then it affects my makeup for the next day too, or if I don't want to wear makeup the next day. Anyways, as soon as people received their orders with the Michaela thing, if they were lucky to at all, which is a whole other thing. A lot of people have had issues when ordering POV by Michaela where they don't get their orders, but that's a whole other thing. As I said, they just weren't what was advertised. They were sticky, the color was showing up patchy, they were really goopy, you couldn't build it up more than a couple of layers without it getting stringy and nasty. Just all of the things that Michaela specifically said weren't going to happen happened. All of the things that it was like, this won't occur. Guaranteed it will. The original ads were deleted, and the brand started saying that they never said that, and so did people associated with the brand or who had friendships with Michaela. Started saying, she never said that, you guys are misusing it. Why did you guys even think that you could build it up? Why would you ever think that? Rage. The influencer narrative shifted to, of course it gets nasty, there's not a single product like this in the world that doesn't, you're only supposed to use a thin layer, why do you all think you're supposed to build it up? That was basically the influencer narrative. And the Lipstick Lesbians were on that train. We're tied back into our original point by the Lipstick Lesbians being one of the accounts to propagate the narrative of you're using it wrong, they never claimed you could build it up. Again, they defended the product working badly in the name of innovation. Yeah, they love to say it's okay for expensive things to work terribly as long as they're innovative. And I would argue if it works really, really badly, it's not innovative. It could be in the future, but don't make me pay for something that's really bad now because it might be good in the future. That's what video games are doing, and people are really sick of that too. All of this context is to lay out that the Lipstick Lesbians have a habit and trackable pattern of treating their audience like idiots and excusing bad products if it benefits them financially, while also claiming to be product experts who can be relied on for objective information, which is the case for basically every single makeup and skincare influencer who exist at this point. Like it's very hard to find ones that will not say a product works better than it actually does because they have financial motivation too. It's very difficult to find. I'm getting real tired of that too. So recently the Lipstick Lesbians decided to start their second brand, and they called it Leaked Labs, which myself and many others think that the name sounds a little icky. It's just Leaked Labs. It doesn't sound nice. They could have workshopped that name a little longer, but then again, they only spent a year to a year and a half on the entire business concept from idea to launch, according to their own timeline that they claimed, which I don't think is long enough. I just don't think that that's long enough for what they are trying to do. They explain the concept as, and I'm paraphrasing this is not a direct quote, but they basically explain the concept as customers acting as a focus group to test innovative and unique formulas that are not being put out by larger brands. They said that they went to, there's basically these conventions that are for makeup brands where labs and factories will show off formulas that they have created and try to sell them to brands, because a lot of brands don't necessarily make their own formula. They go to the laboratory or factory that make their products and they go, do you have anything new for us, Doc? It's like a Saturday morning cartoon. And Lipstick Lesbians said that they went to one of these and saw a bunch of products and were like, oh my god, none of these brands are putting these out, so let's bring it to consumers instead. Which on the surface seems fun, especially if you're like me, a makeup hobbyist who owns drawers full of makeup and you kind of feel like you've been seeing the same things over and over and over. But if you think about it for a couple more seconds, it is like, well, there's probably a reason. There's probably a reason that this stuff didn't go to market. And there was, and we'll get there. They portrayed it as if customers will get direct lab samples and get to try never before focused grouped products. And that's important. This product hasn't been tested by anyone. You're the first people. And it later turned out that no, actually, this specific thing that they came out with had been tested multiple times by multiple other brands and tested poorly. People did not like them in the focus group, so they decided we're not going to come out with this. People don't like this. And then they came out with it. And guess what? People still didn't like it. But instead of you getting paid for being in a focus group, you had to pay to be in the focus group. That's right. They made you pay to do something that you normally get paid for. I'm going to get so angry that I have to shave myself bald for how warm the anger is making me. So they called it Flexi, and it's like a flexible powder thing. They showed it in a bunch of sheets, and they were like, look, you could cut it out as a cloud. You could cut it out as all these fun shapes. We're just going to make it a disc. We're just going to make it a circle like every other eyeshadow powder in the world, but we could have made it a fun shape. Thanks for showing us that you could have made it a fun shape, and then you didn't do that. They claimed that it could be used wet or dry, and that wet would just give it extra incredible color payoff, but dry would be great too. That's what they claimed. And that the benefit of it was it's a powder that flexes instead of shatters. Here's the thing about that. A lot of people, before the product came out, there were a lot of people trying to defend it. And one thing that always happens when something is dubious is people saying, well, it's probably good for disabled people. Guess what? It's not. In this particular one, people were saying, well, disabled people probably drop their powders all the time. And by the way, I can speak on this. My health issues are none of anyone's business on the internet. However, if you go back on this channel a couple of years, you will see that I have dealt with some health problems that caused me to have a just 24/7 nonstop tremor in my dominant hand. And I've handled that now, but it did leave some lasting effects on my mobility and grip strength, we'll say. And so I could tell by looking, you have to pinch the discs in your hand if you want to like apply them directly to the face, which is what they recommend and what they show in every single one of the advertisements, applying it directly to your face by holding it or pinching it. It's a thin little disc. It's going to get all over your fingers, which is messy and gross. But also, that's hard to do if you have mobility issues. So sure, if your hands shake and you drop it, then it's not going to shatter. But you also have to pinch it real tight, and that's hard when you have mobility issues. And also, one of the nice things about a normal eyeshadow palette is that you leave it in front of you, and you can tap a brush into it, and you can have the eyeshadows on just like a normal flat surface that's totally steady, and you can dip your brush into it, and then the only thing you have to worry about dropping is your brush. On top of that as well, we are currently, like, the trends sweeping makeup is eyeshadow sticks and jellies, which do the same thing that this said it wanted to do, but more effectively because it's in a stick form. So if you do drop it, it's not going to be like, oh, I dropped the entire powder on the floor and now it's gross. It's like, oh, I'm probably going to have to like wipe that layer of the otherwise fully contained in a package stick. So that little tangent. Anyway, yeah, they said you're supposed to directly rub it on your face, and we're like, you could also use a brush for it. But then in the video where she rubbed it on her, directly on her eye, and then she rubbed it on her finger and rubbed it on her eye, and then she took a brush and brushed over that. But that doesn't show the results of a brush because you already packed it on using your finger. Irritating. Anyway, a lot of people did have doubts. There were people defending it with the things that I mentioned, but a lot of people did have their doubts, and when it shipped out, a lot of those doubts were solidified. There were some people who were defending it as maybe being good for professional makeup artists, right? Because it's like, oh, hey, they travel a lot. They have to take their makeup from place to place, so it's much more likely to shatter in that scenario than someone who just does their makeup at home. And then a professional makeup artist used it. She had trouble getting these powders they don't show up when they're dry. The claim that they work well when they're dry is just a straight up fallacy. Even the swatches on their own the swatches on their own website and TikTok videos where they do it dry for the official brand look terrible. And so you pretty much have to use it wet if you want any actual payoff, and people were finding that it does not dry very quickly at all. And there was one professional makeup artist who the standard for sanitizing makeup in between clients is to spray down with isopropyl alcohol. It's not really going to affect the makeup very much generally. It'll sanitize it, it'll kill off bacteria. And she tried that with these, and it destroyed the products, and they were just like unusable after that. And people are also finding that they tore really easily, so they're not going to shatter, but they're going to just like rip apart on you while you're holding them the way that you're recommended to hold them. Or if you leave them out on something in order to dry, you have to peel it off and it'll rip then, and things like that, right? And there were people trying to argue that it was environmentally friendly because it comes in a little tin and you get the 4 different colors all stacked on top of each other in one tin, with other people pointing out that that's going to cause the colors to mix into each other, that if you put one in because it feels dry, but it's not entirely dry, then it's going to be in a sealed container, damp, and there's potential of bacteria growth in that, which the Lipstick Lesbians did try to fire back with, like, nuh-uh, we talked to our cosmetic chemist bestie. I hate the verbiage that they use. I don't even have anything else to add to that. I just don't like the way that they talk and the way that they address other people. Anyways, so they talked to the cosmetic chemist, but they only test up to a 28-day period, and you're probably going to want to test a lot longer than that for something like this. And also it still comes in plastic packaging. They put the tiny little tin into a plastic baggie and send you that plastic baggie plus all of the, so it doesn't actually save on packaging, really. If anything, I would argue that it is more wasteful as packaging, because why does it need to be in a plastic baggie? It's just so that it would feel more like a lab sent it to you, which will get to the fact that it is not actually a lab sample like they claimed it was, and that the brand itself is now backtracking and saying, we never said it was a lab sample. Sorry that I keep looking myself in this, by the way. My allergies are really affecting me, and I'm trying to make sure that my nose isn't running without me noticing. Sorry about that. One particular reviewer, Jen Loves, who's her own can of worms that I don't have time for, reviewed the product and showed that you really can't use a brush with it unless no color comes off if you don't wet it, and the thin discs all come stacked in one little container with no separation. More reviews by other customers corroborated this lackluster experience. The price is about $34 US base to buy plus shipping, so some people paid upward of $40 for the shipping, which makes it like $10 per eyeshadow, and you're getting, I think, 2 grams total between all of the eyeshadows, which is just not worth the money, especially for something that is supposed to be a lab sample. As in, not a finished product, which is what they claimed. But then they got mad at people for being like, why am I paying this much for an unfinished product? And they were like, it's not unfinished. You said that. Why are you mad at other people for saying what you said? But we'll get there. A lot of people have a problem with the unsanitary nature of these discs. And yeah. I already went over that. Good for yeah, I went over that part as well. There have also been videos showing that each disc has a different amount of product in it. Like, they're not all the same weight. People weighed out each disc, and Lipstick Lesbians tried to respond to that by saying, well, each one has a different finish, so they're going to weigh different. And that's a problem, too. Why does each disc have a different finish? Like, some of them are more glittery, like chunky glittery, and some of them are more metallic, and some of them are a little in between, and I think that that's a weird choice to do. And it's also not, that's also not a justification for getting different amounts of products for each one of them. People have also pointed out that, similarly to a bar of soap, you actually, even though they're like, you can use up the entire thing, unless you are putting these out on a palette, which they sent, like a paint palette, which they sent out in PR to influencers, but if you bought the product, you do not receive that. Unless you do that, and you're just like putting it in the tin and taking it back out, it's going to disintegrate into like little bits, and you're not going to end up using all of the tiny little bits, similarly to a bar of soap, unless you want to do the same thing with a bar of soap where like you put it in some pantyhose and then you got all the bits in there, but you can't do that for eyeshadow, which is why it is in a pan. Or a stick. Nice little twist up eyeshadow stick crayon thing. I got some for my mom, she loves them. So the reviews haven't been good. And they advertise this brand as, hey, give us all your feedback. This is all about feedback. You let us know if a product is good or bad. We will accept your criticism if the product is bad. Tell us if you hate it. That's important, because then we'll make improvements to it and send it back to you, and we won't get defensive. They never said we won't get defensive, but like, that's what you would assume, right? If they're like, give us all your feedback, you would assume, oh, okay, so they're not going to get weird and defensive and condescending about it. They got weird and defensive and condescending about it. First off, they called it their State of the Union address. And at the time that I wrote this Tumblr post, I had just watched a video by a non-American creator pointing out how weird and tone-deaf that is, considering there have been multiple actual State of the Union addresses from the current United States government announcing things like going to war and rising gas prices and things like that. And it's like really tone-deaf to do. And to name it that for the fact that you put out a bad makeup product. I hadn't even thought of that, but this non-American YouTuber who was talking about it said that every other non-American that they talked to was like, oh my god, that's a terrible phrasing to use. And then the State of the Union video was just really condescending and angry that people didn't love it. People were misunderstanding the brand and misunderstanding the product, and as we have seen is the pattern with the Lipstick Lesbians, they blamed a bad product on the people who bought it thinking that it would be good. The previous claims of wanting customer feedback as a part of focus group testing were proven untrue, as they dismissed every bit of negative feedback and reinforced that because it is technically innovative, it is flawless. This included things like comparing it to the selfie camera. They said when the selfie camera came out, it was seen as a narcissistic innovation, and then they took a selfie and went, but look at it now. So that's just what this is. People don't get it, but someday they will. First of all, that's not that's there's so much wrong with that I can't even go into it. First of all, the selfie camera was not, people were taking selfies before we had front-facing cameras. And people were like, oh, it's weird to take so many pictures of yourself. But it wasn't like it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing whatsoever. It is a bad comparison and metaphor to make. I have to blow my nose again. Give me a second. Bad comparison to make. They also did a weird thing where they, like, ended it with Alexis saying, I only dated men till I tried a woman. So think about that and be open-minded, which is just like, hey, man, please don't. First of all, that's such a weird rhetoric to spread as a queer person, which, by the way, I am. So I'm coming from a place within the community when I say please don't do that. Please don't compare figuring out your sexuality and going on that journey to a makeup, like releasing a bad makeup product. That's just weird. That's just weird and bad, and it leaves a really bad taste in my mouth, especially with all of the things going on in the world. And so this wasn't in the State of the Union, but I found out about it after this Tumblr post, so I'm going to say it now. I don't know when exactly in the timeline of events this falls. I believe it was before the product was sent out to customers. However, at one point, when describing the concept of the business, Alexis said, you know what, I think I have the quote up as well. Yes, Alexis said, quote, about the makeup products, these orphans, I call them orphans because nobody wants them. Which I think is just disgusting. I think that's just a completely morally reprehensible thing to say. That's so disgusting. I call them orphans because nobody wants them. What is her thought process behind that? Because most people are not orphans because nobody wanted them. Most people are orphans because of horrible tragedy. And also, that is in and of itself a horrible tragedy. She could, if she wanted to make a comparison to orphans, which she shouldn't because this is a makeup product and those are real human beings. If she really wanted to make the comparison, she could have just said, I call them orphans because they don't have anyone taking care of them right now, or something like that. But that's just disgusting and horrible, and to me, tells you so much about how she views the world in general. And it's not in a good moral way, in my personal opinion. That's such a gross thing to say. It's such a gross thing to say. Another thing that they said during the State of the Union thing is people were like, why are we paying to get an unfinished product? And they said, you're not getting an unfinished product. They're totally safe to use and they've been finished, but most companies take more lead time before releasing the product to you, and we're releasing it to you earlier than they would. It's finished and it's gone through everything that it would with them, except they spend extra time on it. So it is unfinished. You can't say both of those are true at once. If it's a finished product, but you've left, so it's not a lab sample, right? They admitted there, and they made like you can have multiple pictures in one post on Instagram, and they made one of those where it's like, it's not actually a lab sample, it's a fully finished product, we just make it look like a lab sample. So they put it in worse packaging on purpose. They put it in really cheap, bland, bad packaging on purpose to make it look like you were getting a lab sample because that's what they claimed you were getting. But then they said it's not actually a lab sample, it's a fully finished product, and we did all of that on purpose, and the packaging is cheap and bad on purpose, and that's why you should pay $34 for 4 thin discs that don't work the way that we said that they work, and don't actually fill a need that other products aren't already filling. I'm gonna turn into a crab from the anger claws that I'm making near my head. They've turned me into a Lego person, screaming. I wish that I could do, like, the Muppet Kermit scream. I'm so infuriated. Yeah, in the US, it's actually illegal to send out lab samples to general customer bases. There have been brands that have sent influencers, like, unlabeled, no packaging lab samples, just to be like, hey, do you think that this is a formula that's ready for market? Do you think your followers would like this? And there is another brand called Ritual Defy, which has people pay a discounted price in order to test out sample versions of the products that they may adjust later, which I have a problem with that as well, but Ritual Defy is at least discounting it and giving credit towards the finished product, so that's a little better, but I still have a problem with that. But yeah, it's actually illegal to send out samples to general consumer bases, and so it's gone through all of the final rounds of finalization. It's just terrible. And then I have a couple of addendums to my Tumblr post here. One of them is about the orphan statement, which I'm gonna have to, like, bite something about that. I'm gonna have to find, like, a stick and just... People have also come out to allege that this product has been focus group and market tested multiple times by multiple different brands and rejected because it was bad for all of the reasons laid out in the prior rest of this video. The claims have not been proven, but they do seem plausible, as it is well known among makeup enthusiasts who are really into this, that factories keep stock formulas and try to sell them to brands more often than brands coming up with new formulas on their own. There's also an additional part of this where people were talking to each other, like, so how do we give feedback exactly? Do we just, like, post it? And then they never said, like, oh, I'll send you an email or whatever. But they did end up sending out a survey email, but the questions were all very leading, you know? Where it was like, how unique would you say this is compared to other brands? How often do you think you're going to use it? What would you rate it out of 5? And very clearly formatted in a way that makes it difficult to provide criticism or negative review. It's not impossible, but it is hard on purpose. People were posting the email and the survey. And then the terms of service from their website have come to people's attentions as well. And I'm going to read, this is directly from, I believe, section 11 in the terms of service section of their website. I'm going to read you directly. This is not paraphrased or anything, this is direct. If you submit, upload, post, email, or otherwise transmit any ideas, suggestions, feedback, reviews, proposals, plans, or other content, collectively feedback, you grant us a perpetual, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use, reproduce, modify, publish, distribute, and display such feedback in any medium for any purposes, including for commercial use. We may, for example, use our rights under this license to operate, provide, evaluate, enhance, improve, and promote the services and to perform our obligations and exercise our rights under the terms of service. Now that is a big old legal jargon word salad, which is what they specialize in. They love to do. If you decide to go watch any of their videos after this just to, like, see for yourself directly the things that they were saying, you can't watch their State of the Union anymore. They deleted it, but there are multiple channels that have recordings and stuff included in their own videos. But if you decide to go watch one of their videos, you will notice that they use a lot of word salad in order to purposefully confuse people and obfuscate their intentions and, like, what they're actually trying to express in order to seem impressive and intelligent. But basically they're saying, like, and brands do this all the time, right? A lot of brands will take public feedback and respond to it and make a product based on trends, public feedback, things like that. You know, if something comes out and everybody hates it, a lot of brands will, like, pull the product and put it back with things that people have said that they wanted to see. Essentially, they want to take any ideas offered up to them by people who paid to be involved and then use them, but without compensating you in any way. And that's why in a lot of, test groups and whatever, they focus groups, they usually compensate you or at least let you do it for free, but these people paid money for this. So that's why I said I don't think it's technically legally a scam, but I consider it to be a scam. That's why I said that. God, that sucks. That just sucks. That sucks and it makes me mad. And that's what that's everything I read from my Tumblr post, but I actually have another thing where I tried to watch some of this is a bonus, but I tried to watch some of the videos and like take detailed comprehensive notes directly from the Lipstick Lesbians videos. And I was going to like go through comprehensive notes about those, and then I got so mad that I was like, these notes are useless for that, so I'm just going to put it in as a bonus here for a little bit of additional entertainment. So the first thing I have up here is the anger about trying to say that a year and a half from conceptualizing of a business to launching it is so long. Finally, we've done it, and me being angry because that is not a long time. And next I just have, quote, lab sample coated, which is a way that they described the product at one point. Lab sample coated. I'm so irritated. There was there was a part where they claimed that even using the product wet, it doesn't feel or look heavy, and I just wrote, I disagree. Obviously I don't have the product myself because I don't have $34 to spend on that, and also I wasn't a fan of them, so I didn't know this was happening until it happened. But from watching the video, I can disagree with the looks heavy part. It does look quite heavy, so. This part just says, I can't read this, my grandpa is subscribed to this, and there's cussing in this one, but just me being mad about the shipping price. Oh, this irritated me so much. In one of the official company ads, Alexis said, "My favorite way to absolutely use them is actually to wet them." That's how she talks. The enunciation is so strange, and it feels like your teacher who's mad at you. You ever had a teacher get really mad at you and they over-enunciate at you on purpose because they're, like, trying to make you feel dumb for not understanding the math lesson they were giving because they're doing it badly? That's the way that Alexis talks in every single one of her videos. But I have a problem with that sentence because my favorite way to absolutely use them is actually to wet them is not grammatically correct, and I just think that if you are posting an official ad for your business, the least you could do is attempt to be grammatically correct and do like a take two where you don't have the random absolutely that does nothing for the sentence structure in there. That just really irritated me. If any of you don't know, I'm a writer, and so I get extra annoyed at stuff like that. And then there was a part where she said that she likes to drench it inside of the tin, which again, we talked about the issue of like a sealed wet space with these products in them when they're damp. Like that's gross. And then she said when she's feeling freaky, she'll use a plate, which I don't like the way that they phrase things. I don't like the overly familiar, hey girl, hey beauty queens, we're feeling freaky. I don't like that. You're not my friend. You're trying to get money out of me. Stop it. The part where she packed it on with a finger and then used her brush over it, demonstrating nothing because you already packed it on with your fingers, so we can't see how it applies with a brush. That was infuriating. Mean teacher, cosmetic chemist bestie, beauty queens and beta baddies, just more being annoyed with the way that they speak. There was a video where because people were like, this seems unsanitary, they decided to call one of the cosmetic chemists who worked on the product and tested it, and they said, quote, "We want to hear from a chemist." But then immediately she cut him off and talked over him and explained it herself. And he just had to go like, yeah, and essentially repeat what she said or add a little bit to it, but she also kept interrupting him with her additional comments. So that was irritating. My brother interrupted me. Show them the thing.
I did some changes in my Motanui mock. I added some little gear details. Extra ones. I added some more.
This is already a 40-minute video, so let's be quick.
Look at that. Look at that beauty, man.
It's a very cool Motanui. I also told him that my favorite way to absolutely use them is actually to wet them, and he also found that perplexing.
I don't think that's right. I'm not an English major, I'm not a mathematician. Those ain't right.
You gonna exit? Come on, man. Okay. This was not something the Lipstick Lesbians said, but this is something that somebody who was defending the product said. It requires no packaging, so it's more environmentally friendly. It's in packaging. It's in the tin is packaging. It's tin, but that's still packaging, and also the plastic around it, and also whatever it ships in. So that's still packaging. Yeah. And then other things that I mentioned, like the isopropyl alcohol and the ads showing that. So I said that the palette, like the little paint palette thing to leave them on to dry, was only included in PR. The ads actually showed it as if it would be included, not just in PR, as if you would get it too if you were a paying customer. But no, they only included that if you're an influencer who got sent it for free. So that's really cool and fun and good. You know, that's a really good look for the business when you include a bunch of extra stuff for people who don't pay for it, and then you skimp out on the people who did pay for it. Just an all-around infuriating situation, and I think I also understand why they had to pivot from working corporate marketing jobs to being influencers, because, hey, not doing a good job with the marketing here. Everybody's mad at it. And it's actually been, I think, like a week or something since their State of the Union. And they made a post on Instagram being like, we'll make a video addressing all of your guys' post-State of the Union concerns soon, but it's hard right now, we can't. We're in Korea and we're making brand deals. And then they posted a video talking about, like, yeah, we flew over to Korea because we have to talk to labs to get more products to charge you insane prices for, and then they won't work and we'll get mad at you for giving feedback, even though the entire concept of the business is predicated on feedback, which is what people were excited about in the first place. And then they also went to Italy to talk to the Italian chemists who were involved in creating it as well, and they did the same thing where they were like, but there's preservatives that make it okay to wet it, right? And it's like, that's not the concern. The concern is not there's no preservatives in it. The concern is the preservatives are probably not going to hold up super well on if you put it back in the thing and it's still kind of damp because it takes a really long time to dry out, and also you can't clean them with isopropyl alcohol or else they'll start to break apart, and they start to break apart anyway when you said that the cool part of it is that you can pick it up and rub it on your eye. So there's just a lot of, like, I don't think it's misunderstanding people's concerns. I think it's refusing to address people's concerns in a very, like, if we talk about that, then people who still defend us, we're going to have to acknowledge that it was bad. So I think that that's what's happening. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I am probably going to post another makeup video soon because I did a look on Tumblr and one of my friends said that they would love a tutorial on it. So that might be coming soon as well. I don't know if I'm going to fully get back into YouTube stuff, but it's fun and I miss doing it. So thank you for watching. Bye!